this broken down into two pieces. So I have programmers and I have users. So for the user, the software is already made for them and they just need to use them. And for programmers, their work is kind of like a workshop. So think about like a person who owns a wood shop or like a metal workshop or something. They have different tools. They can use those different tools to do things. They can buy new tools or do something that they can't with the tools that they already have. So if you refer to the picture on the bottom right here again, let's just say you have tools such as a hammer, a chisel, a plier and everything. But if somebody needs to, measure something, they obviously need to have like a ruler or a measuring tape, right? So that's what kind of programmers are. You have access to a bunch of tools that's built into the programming language. And if you would like to, accomplish something else, you would have to, have access to a new tool to do that. And that's, I think, the magic of Python and programming, which I'll kind of go over a little bit in the later on in the presentation. So now let's talk about this Python course a little bit. So throughout this Python course, I will take take the student from a beginner all the way to a Python pro who is very proficient in Python programming. And I think, like Jack said, this course will prepare you to write the CCC contest. And throughout this course, we will have CCC junior examples sprinkled throughout the course. So you can apply the knowledge that we learned in the course to some real life CCC problems, which I think is kind of cool. So let's actually go over the course overview. So class number 1, which is the first class, we will be doing like a very brief introduction to Python. So like setting up your environment, receiving input, dealing with output, and writing the first lines of code, which I think is always very exciting when it comes to, when it comes to programming. The second lesson would be our introduction to more primitive data structures. So string and integers, using variables, Booleans and everything. So for those of you who know what those are, this is like a very simple introduction. And the third lesson will be Python operators. So okay, let's just continue on. Okay, let's just continue on. The third lesson will be our Python operators. So we can learn about expressions, Booleans and branching, if statements, and it's just the more mathematical type of thing in this lesson. So moving on to number 4 and 5, we will look at even more data structures, so like lists and arrays, dictionaries, sets, tuples, just more of these like, more complex data structures compared to, strings and integers. And we're going to move on to loops. So we're going to learn about while loops and for loops in the next 2 lessons. And moving on, we will learn about stacks and queues, which I think is something that is more unique to this class, because in a lot of Python classes, they kind of just stop at the basics. But in this Python course, we'll be delving just a little bit deeper and teaching some of the concepts that the students need in order to write the CCC contest properly. So like, for example, stacks and queues, you would probably need to know this for the CCC contest. You probably should know how to write functions as well for the CCC contest. And moving on a little bit, we're going to talk about recursive and iterative approaches to solving problems, which is obviously very useful, not just for the CCC, but just like everything that we taught in this course, teach in this course will be useful for like real life applications. So if you were to, work in the field and everything. So yeah, and course 11 would be, lesson number 11 would be object-oriented programming, which is like a strong suit of Python. Python is one of our object-oriented programming languages, and I think it just makes programming very easy. So this is something that is extremely useful. And moving on, we're going to teach some basic algorithms. So we're going to do some searching, we're going to do some sorting, and we're going to do a little bit of graph theory. Just like a brief introduction on that, because there's so much stuff that we can do with graph theory and sorting and searching. So I'm pretty sure basic algorithms like this will help you obviously write the CCC contest, especially if you move to the senior level, because you would need some of this stuff for the CCC contest senior level. And the 13th lesson, which is going to be something that we only teach that is very unique, we actually delve a little bit into hashing and hash maps, so tree maps, hash sets, and tree sets. So these things are, again, very useful, and they're going to be something that you use in the CCC contest. And finally, we finish off the course in lesson 14 with just a review, going over examples, and putting everything together. So that's about it with our class structure. So let's talk about code versus program versus software for those of you who are not very familiar with programming. So code is what I like to call a sequence of instructions written in a programming language that tells the computer what it needs to do. So like, for example, our chores example from before in like slide number 2, we need to tell this computer what you need to do from top to bottom at which time. And that's basically like our sequence of instructions for the computers, which we call code. So let's move on to program a little bit. So for a program, it's basically code that is compiled into a language that the computer can speak. And usually it's binary. So it's a series of 1 and 0s that the transistor can understand to whether turn on or off in order to, achieve something. And when code is compiled into computer language binary, like I call it, it is now called a program. So code needs to become a program in order to be run. And software is basically just taking a bunch of programs and putting it together for something so the user is able to use it. And this user can have no knowledge about how to program, how to do anything. They just need to be able to open the app and use it. And that's it. So that's basically our tree of software development, I guess, if you want to call it like that. So I have this like quote on the bottom here: code makes programs and programs make softwares, which I think is where we start. But everybody, we should start at the code level and we gradually move up. So this is just a little bit of an introduction to Python programming, kind of. So usually when we write code, we start with the idea, which is the pseudocode, and we transform that into something actually like instructions that the computer would actually understand. So just like a little code snippet here. So the pseudocode, the idea, basically, we would tell the computer to ask the user for their name and ask the user for their age. And if the user is older than 19, then greet the user. Otherwise, tell the user that they're too young, right? So this is like a simple if statement comparison condition for the computer. And in order for us to transform that into the language that the computer can understand, which in this case is written in Python, it's going to be name equals input. So all of this code that the computer can understand, which I think is pretty cool. If you enroll in this class, you'll be learning about how to write this, which is pretty cool. So yeah, let's move on a little bit. And so let's talk about why we should learn Python instead of other programming languages. So for those of you who have known already, there are a wide variety of different programming languages. There's popular ones include Python, you have Java, you have C++, C, any of the C series languages, and there's so much more that you can actually delve into in the world of programming. But why do we start with Python? So obviously, Python is very special in the sense that it's very easy and it's also very, very versatile. So the syntax, I'm going to talk about the syntax a little later, but Python is just extremely easy to develop because it's very widely used by everyone, and it's just very easy to understand, which kind of leads us to the straightforward grammar, or in programming, we actually call that the syntax. Everything is very similar to the English language. So if you can actually speak the English language, Python syntax would be very easy to understand. Like you saw before in the Python code, like an if statement is just literally if and then else. It's very straightforward, and it's easy to read, write, and learn. So because of the straightforward syntax, and nothing is like very confusing. I'm actually going to show an example of Python compared to C++ later. And I think you guys can get a perspective of how easy Python is compared to those. And obviously Python is very widely used. I think I already talked about that a little bit, meaning there are basically libraries for everything. Since there's more people using the language, there's more support for it, and you can find better help online. And it also means that it is very high demand, because the more people that are using it, it must be a good language, right? That means a lot of these like big tech companies are actually using this language to create their apps. And some of the biggest examples I have listed here. So we have Spotify, we have Instagram, Facebook, and Reddit, which I think are some of the biggest programs that all of you have heard now. So yeah, that's why we learn Python instead of another programming language. So here's the example that I was talking about. So just for a simple, print something into the console. For C++, you'd have to import like IO stream. You have to use namespace as standard, and then you have to like write this big loop. It's a mess. But in Python, it is one line: print yes. There's nothing else to it. So that kind of shows us how easy Python is compared to other programming languages. And I think that's why that's what makes Python a great starting point for a lot of us. So yeah. So Python can do everything, and this is the first step you can take something that can change the world. By taking this Python course, you'll be introduced to all of the things that I said in the course preview. And I think, if you programming and computer is changing the world as we speak. And I think that this is the first step that you can take in order to contribute to that changing of the world. So yeah. So here, what are some things that can be done with Python? So obviously we have desktop applications. We have just like, stuff that you use on a desktop every day, Photoshop, Google Chrome. Those are all written majority in Python. And we have blockchain, which is, crypto stuff. I'm not really too familiar with crypto. So I think I'm just gonna have to pass up on that. And automation. So for example, when you're on a computer and you could make like a macro or something for your video game or to accomplish like a certain purpose, I think automation, you can use Python for that. Hardware control. So if you're into robotics, you're into like home automation or something, Python can be used to control hardware. Games, that's pretty self-explanatory. You can code some pretty fun little games with Python, and you can use them for data science, problem solving, and AI and machine learning, which I think is more like advanced uses of Python. But by taking this course, you'll have the foundations to do some of those things in the future, which I think is pretty cool. So there's a lot more applications, and I think that's my bad, by the way. And I think Python is like endless. It's an amazing language, and it really kind of shines in these categories. So being one of the most popular programming languages, learning Python will set you up for great things. So these great things include, like we said before, like I mentioned a lot in this presentation, programming contests such as the CCC, personal projects, the industry, and more. So I think that by learning Python, you'll be very, very prepared for these things. And I think a lot of you in this audience is learning Python to prepare for the CCC, which is good. So yeah. So here's some of the things that you can do with Python. So let's actually take a look at some of the stuff here on my desktop. So first of all, if you guys remember from my slide, by the way, can you guys see my desktop here? It shouldn't be the presentation anymore, right? Can I get a thumbs up in the chat or something?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So if you guys are seeing this, like I said, let's just look at like a small game that you can write in Python. So let's actually not do that. Let's open that in VS Code here. So if you were to open this game called snake.py, this is just like a really simple snake game that you can write using the Pygame library and a bunch of like system and random. So Pygame, like we said, it's since Python is very widely used, there are little libraries like this that you can use to actually do stuff. And yeah, so let's just show you guys how this works, for example. So this is just like a simple snake game, and I can control how the snake is moving. So you can see I'm not very good at this, but I think you guys get the point. You have a score counter and everything. And this is something that you can do in Python, which I think is pretty cool. Obviously, you can come up with more original games than this, but let's just go ahead and close this up here. So yeah, so if you look at the code a little bit, we make use of some of the stuff that we actually learned throughout the course. So we learn about class and object-oriented programming, and that's what I basically have here. And we make use of loops, so like a function, the main function. So that's what actually runs the game itself by using the object that we created here called snake, and the object called food. And here we just generate the game and we make the game playable. So by the end of this course, all the participants should be able to write something like this. And this is pretty cool because you can apply these ideas to more complex projects and everything. And I think that you can create something that's really, really cool that no one has created before. So that's basically Snake. Another example is our a robotic arm project that I actually did with a couple of friends. And this kind of demonstrates the hardware control capabilities of Python. So let's actually go ahead and open this folder in VS Code here. So I can show you guys what's going on. Stuff to show robotic arm. There we go. All right, so essentially what this project is we had a robotic arm that can move something around, and that's a physical build. I don't have it anymore, but I think you guys are gonna have to take my word for it. This is like an approximate of what it looked like, but basically what this project did is it made use of computer vision, and it made use of servers. So like a socket server from a client to a server itself. and we had to transfer data around from different environments. And I think that it was very cool. So we take a look at some of the backend code. This is like the backend code that we ran actually on the Raspberry Pi in order to control the motors to move our object around. And our server and our setup, these things are all written in Python. And I think that, if you learn this course, these are some of the stuff that you will be able to do. And I can't really run it right now because I don't really have the hardware set up. But yeah, so this is like a great application of Python. And finally, I have one last example to show you guys, and that is Airboard. So I think as Jack kind of talked about before, I participate in a lot of different hackathons. And I think hackathons are a great way to learn and build something cool. So let's look at Airboard a little bit. Essentially what this does is it allows you to just take any object. So for example, this yellow pen that I have, and just write in midair, and it will display the text. And I actually have a video here. So for those of you who are actually here before, I actually made this project with Emery and a couple of friends. So yeah, this is kind of a cool little thing that we did. So let's actually open that as well. Stuff to show. Ooh, okay, Airboard. So yeah, so we have different files for different purposes. So we have one for color detection. We actually have one for gesture detection, and this is just more complex stuff. But yeah, so this is all written in Python, and just like to show you something that we can actually do. So this is something that did not exist before, and I think that by doing this, we are able to do something cool. So let's take a look at this. So this is the program in action, and you can see when he closes his hand, you're actually able to write on the screen, and when he opens it, it doesn't write anymore. And throughout this process, we can basically make a whiteboard that is in thin air, which we thought was a very, very good idea. So yeah, this was one of the cool applications that you can again use with Python, and that's basically it. So that is it for our demonstration part. These are some of the cool things that you can do with Python, and I think that by the end of this course, you'll be able to do all of these. They're all very cool, and I think if you have your own ideas, you can bring them into reality with the help of Python. So yeah, that's about it. So print hello world. Basically, this is like a programming statement that for everyone who is beginning to learn a language, the first thing that you would always do, is to print hello world into the console. And this is the command that you need to do in Python. So yeah, hello world, welcome to Python. And I hope that throughout this course, I'll be able to take you from a Python beginner all the way to a Python pro through the help of different knowledges and applying them to practical uses, such as the CCC contest questions. Thank you very much for listening. And I think I'll hand this over to Jack to answer some of your questions.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Thank you for giving us a so excellent class. Really appreciate your help.
Thank you.
You are very welcome. Yeah. So, everyone, do you have any questions for Stephen? Okay. So this Python class, yeah. Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, you can create. Yeah, I will ask. I will share some information with customer. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you, Jack.
Yeah. So
I have a question.
Oh yeah, please.
What is the Python class?
Oh, okay.
Calendar.
So the calendar would be here. So the Python would be. Let me share my screen with you. So the Python class would be Saturday 3:30 p.m. and Wednesday 1 p.m. And it will start from July 2nd. So as I mentioned, so this time is negotiable. So if you pay your tuition and enrolled in this class, and you can, if you think this time doesn't fit you, and we can negotiate with the teacher and to find a mutually convenient time slot. If we can't find it, so we can give you full refund before the first class. So if you pay by 5 p.m., today. So you can get early price, so 489. And if you if you didn't, otherwise you will get as a normal price of 540.
When does the class end, and how many people are in the class?
How many people? What? Sorry, can you repeat your question?
When does the class end?
Oh, when is the exam? So this exam would be February next year. But we suggest you prepare in advance, because you know, when you went to the grade 11 and grade 12, you have some more study burden. You may not have time to prepare as a contest. So I suggest you to prepare the contest at least 1 year beforehand. So you have the more time to handle your curriculum study. And also, Canadian mathematics is different from other countries' mathematics contests, because the 80% questions would be within the scope of your curriculum. So if you learn right now, so it will be very helpful to your curriculum study in grade 10.
Excuse me, can I ask you a question?
Sure, please.
It's twice a week, right? Saturday 3:30, Wednesday 1 p.m.
Yeah.
Is it twice a week, right? How long each time?
How long each time? Okay, so let me introduce to you. So in total, so it would be in total it would be 22 hours, and each class is 2.2 hours. Yeah, please note like this, because the other education institutions said one session is 2 hours, but it includes a 10 minutes break. But in our class, we also include the 10 minutes break, right? So if the teachers take 10 minutes break, so our class will extend 10 minutes. So each session is 2.2 hours.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Hello， 你好啊。
你好。
Hello，
你好，请说。
你好，请问是一个星期两次吗？
一个星期2次啊。
就是每一次是2个小时，是不是啊？
每一次是2.2个小时。是。
2.2个小时。
对，因为是这样的，我们还是这个非常希望这个因为编程是一个基本的技能嘛，就是说就像你游泳学自行车一样的，我们还是希望小孩就是从小就学会编程，因为他们以后的那个作业啊，以后的这个大学啊或者高中的一些作业啊，其实你用编程去完成的话，能够让你就是获得亮丽的分数啊。另外一个我可能以后那个中午的时候也要介绍的，就是说你去申请一些比较好的大学的专业的时候，比如说是申请一些准医学专业吧，或者是你去申请什么计算机专业啊，或者是什么数学专业的话，你如果有这个编程竞赛的经历，会大大的帮助。那比如说你都不一定，就算你没有竞赛成绩的话，你像我们学校的一些学生啊，他们去参加什么全国性的一些比赛啊，什么科技啊，一些是作品集，他们参加学校的这个 research 的 project， 对不对？那么他们用这个编程语言去完成他们的 research project， 那么他们去参加那个什么全国的什么 science pro expo 啊什么之类的那个评比的话呢，拿到奖牌的话呢，对他们进入这些学校呢帮助非常大。你要是 GPA 好的话，大家的 GPA 都很好。
我想问一下你们这个课程有一个今天下午5点到8点，这个课程是针对7年级到8年级的学生。我想问一下，这里是学的是什么东西的？是什么？
这个原来计划是高斯的数学竞赛， 高斯的数学竞赛，
因为我
高斯的数学竞赛
是
就是7年级和8年级的那个。那我看吧
就。是数学啊什么的，什么的
我 share 我的
对
屏幕给你吧。那个你能看见吗？
我看见，
你能不能看见？
嗯，
我 share 我的屏幕了，你能看见我的屏幕吗？
我看到你的屏幕，看到了，
你看到了是吧？
对，